Is private practice dead? Should new graduates consider starting their own practice? What are the pros and cons of a partnership? Learn the answers to these questions and many more on this episode of the Talk to Me Doc podcast.
Welcome to the Talk to Me Doc podcast, where it's all about serving the early career physician. Let's talk about the unique issues that face us so we can create a better future for ourselves and those to come. And now your host, Dr. Andrew Tisser.
Hey guys, and welcome back to the Talk to Me Doc podcast. For our returning listeners, thank you for continuing to listen week in and week out. For new listeners, thank you so much for joining us. Because today, like on every episode, we're bringing you the best guests from all around healthcare to discuss issues relating to the early career physician. This week, we have a real treat. You've probably seen this guy everywhere. He is all over social media. Dr. Brent Lacey is a gastroenterologist who is passionate about helping physicians succeed with business and personal finances. As a physician, he understands how overwhelming it can be to step out of clinical training and into a career, and he has seen firsthand the lack of education on how to run a practice and manage finances. He has coached hundreds of families to succeed in eliminating debt, and he has spoken to physician groups around the country on topics related to business and personal finance. That's also why he founded the Scope of Practice website. His goal is to help physicians learn how to manage their businesses successfully and master their personal finances. Well, without further ado, let's bring Brent onto the show. Dr. Brent Lacey, welcome to the Talk to Me Doc podcast.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, it's great. I already recorded a little bio about you for the listeners, but in your own words, if you could give us a little spiel on who you are and what you do.
Yeah, so I'm a full-time gastroenterologist, and but my passion is for really coaching and teaching especially early career and young professional physicians, how to manage their business more successfully and master their personal finances. So when I was coming out of fellowship, I was observing that, there's just a tremendous amount of student loan debt and personal debt that people are coming out of school with. And more than that, people are coming out, looking to join a new practice, especially if they're joining private practice. And, we've been trained for 15 years at this point to, be a good physician. And we know nothing about small business management, how to lead a team well, how to hire and fire, and we're just drowning in debt. And so that's why I started the Scope of Practice, was to try to give people some knowledge, some resources, some connections, some tools to succeed in business and succeed in personal finance.
Yeah, I know. I mean, as an emergency physician, I know nothing about private practice, but I can speak a little bit to small business. But I agree. I don't know why it's not part of our curriculum. I guess there's no motive for our professors in medical school to talk to it, but I don't know why it's not there.
Well, I think that's part of it, but I think also a lot of the folks that are in med school, by and large, most medical schools are big academic centers. And most of the folks that are there are, career academicians, and they've never been in private practice. So they don't really, they know the research world, they know the academic world, but they don't know small business, and there's just a dearth of knowledge, I think.
Yeah, and it's great to see people talking about, some of my passions or finances as well, as they relate to the early career doc. And it's good to see people talking about it. When I was going into medical school, really, it was just Jim Dolly and White Coat Investor, and that was it, and that's an incredible resource. But I think now that more people are starting to talk about it and different perspectives, I find it wonderful.
Yeah. And I think the more people that are talking about it, the better. And, the more we talk about it, I would love it if eventually we talk ourselves, out of a job, as it were. So, if we get to a point where all the med schools start getting hip to the idea that, okay, listen, there's a huge need here. We just need to buckle down and create a curriculum for this. And then all of our blogs and everything become unnecessary. I'd be fine with that.
Yeah, I'd be happy. Then at least people are empowering themselves with knowledge. Well, I know, Brent, I see you all over social media. You're everywhere right now. So I think what better guest to have on the show, and especially coming from somebody who knows nothing about private practice and how to run a practice. So what do you say to people? I've heard it for years that private practice is dead.
Well, I think that is largely a myth. And one of the things that I have observed has been kind of I think a disappointing trend over the last, really 5 years, but is the decline in people interested in going into business for themselves and going into private practice. So in 2000, I think it was in 2018 was the first year that those big physician surveys that are done every year showed that more people are employed physicians than are owned, like owner physicians. That was the first time that went above 50%. I think that with all the coronavirus stuff that just happened, I think we're going to start to see the pendulum swing back once people recognize that, okay, working for a giant hospital corporation isn't quite as secure as I thought it was. Now that I think the veil has been lifted from that notion, and we're starting to see that, okay, financial security is no more than one paycheck away, then I think it will start to re-engage people's interest in private practice, and as that, and having that as their primary model. So I think we're going to start to see more interest in it, not less, over time.
Well, I hope so. I think that is one way that we can try to take back medicine from those who took it from us is to start our own practices and run successful businesses. I think you can modify the private practice is dead to the old way of private practice is dead, as in you get out of training and you hang a shingle and people will come see you. I don't think that's reality anymore.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. And there's plenty of private practice owned, like physician owned private practice groups. And I do see some people that are doing that model. Most people, I think, are joining groups that already exist, or are dividing like an amoeba off of a group that already exists. So like a group gets bigger, they get 6 or 7 or 8 docs, and then maybe they decide, okay, let's open up a second location, and we'll send half the docs over there, half the docs over here, and we'll kind of run our own shops, but maybe work together in terms of having central billing, central coding, and like insurance contract negotiations. So there's a lot of cool models like that. And then in primary care, and this is one of the things that I'm super excited about, I think that we're going to start, I hope at least, that we're going to start to see a rise in people interested in primary care again, with models like direct primary care. There's concierge medicine too. I tend to like the DPC model a little bit better though. And I'm hoping that those kinds of things, as they start to pick up some traction, reinvigorate people's idea that, hey, yeah, the small business thing, that is something that maybe I could get interested in.
Yeah, I love it. I love seeing the DPC model. And I've spoken about it a little bit on the show before, but again, as that's not my forte, could you just enlighten the listeners a little bit as to what that is?
Yeah, so direct primary care, the basic idea is that you have the solo doc, for like a primary care doc, for a smaller panel of patients, and you're your own shop. And then so you're not owned by another practice, you're not owned by a hospital. It's just you. One of the benefits of the DPC model is that I know a lot of the docs that I have interviewed or have talked to about this, they don't do insurance. It's straight up cash pay, and most of them, they have gone to a monthly subscription model, and so it's actually super cool. So they can get so a patient, for example, they sign up for whatever $99 a month, let's say, which is pretty average. And so over the course of a year, they're paying $1,200 a year. Well, you think about what your, full on health insurance is, it's maybe $10,000, $15,000 a year. So, and then, a lot of the DPC folks are doing really cool stuff. There's a doc named Paul Thomas up in Detroit that is doing a lot of work on this, has written a couple of books, and I actually just interviewed him for my podcast. It was a fantastic conversation. But one of the things that he actually got a dispensing license, and offers medications to his patients in their pharmacy, like in his practice. And he's able to sell it to them essentially at cost. So it's not an extra cost for the patients, and they're saving thousands of dollars a year just on that. So there's a lot of really cool options that are coming up that we're seeing that I think are going to be good for patients and physicians both.
Yeah, that's incredible. I mean, just a plug, please listen to Brent's show if you want to hear a little bit more about that. But I think all these different options that have come out over the last few years are really empowering physicians to change the narrative as to what's going on right now out in the world. And I love it, So, well, what do you say? Let's say you have a senior fellow and a subspec cardiology or GI fellow, and they don't like any of the jobs in the geographic area they want, and they're thinking about starting out on their own, but they're scared. So what advice do you give them?
Yeah, so I think you need to consider a few different things. Number one, it is okay to be apprehensive. I think that fear of that is good. I think it's instructive, and I want it to not be crippling for folks. So I think you should think about that as an option. Now, for some of the heavy procedure-based subspecialties, I will say that there is a substantially higher startup cost than, say, a primary care physician or a pediatrician or something. It's going to be a much higher startup cost because you're buying a lot of equipment. So I don't think there's anything wrong with taking a job for at least a year or two and really learning the business before you go and start trying to open up your own practice. So if you're coming out of fellowship, let's say a cardiology or GI fellowship as your example, if you're coming out of a typical training program, you probably weren't taught anything about business. And if you are coming out of a big academic center, you may not have even had the opportunity to interact significantly with a civilian practice group. So there's going to be a lot of things that you just don't know, and you don't know how much you don't know. So I would want people to at least consider the idea of joining a group or working for a group and starting to teach yourself the business of medicine before you go and take out a $3 million loan to start up a practice and buy a bunch of equipment and things like that. So that'd be the first thing. The second thing I would recommend is learn as much as you can. So if you're early in your fellowship and that's what you're thinking about doing, yeah, there's a lot of great resources. You can look at my site. I mean, Andrew's got a lot of great stuff, of course. There's plenty of sites out there that, and people that want to help, people that want to offer you, their advice and support. So I would encourage you to just learn all that you can, before you just take the leap. And then really consider, what do you want to do? Talk to some folks in that industry, talk to folks that are in private practice and ask them, what's the best thing about this and what's the worst thing about this? And, talk to folks that are in big groups, small groups, academic, and, really get a nice sample going and figure out, okay, what is it that I really like about this? Am I just drawn to the sort of the romantic notion of having my own business and being my own master? Or is it, or am I failing to recognize just how much work it's going to be? So, but really spend a lot of time learning and talking to people so that way when you actually start, you're ready to launch.
All great advice, really. Yeah, I think just like anything, you didn't decide to go into medical school in a day either. You learned about the process and you learned about what was going on, I hope. And then you decided to go for it, just like anything else. I mean, small business is risky, but great rewards as well, as long as you know what you're doing. And the other point is, if you really don't know, hire a coach, hire a mentor. There are plenty of people out there willing to help and will save you tons of time and money down the line if you take their advice right now.
Absolutely. I mean, I've had calls from folks from, Hawaii to California to, the East Coast that, call me and ask about, hey, listen, I got these 3 different job offers and they're completely different. And how do I know what's the right thing? And so like for cardiology, for example, the American College of Cards, or if you're OBGYN, ACOG, a lot of those societies, if you're a member, they actually have mentorship programs where you can get paired with a mentor in your field. So there's lots of great resources out there. You just got to look for them.
Sure. And what about someone who's been out a few years and they've been working for a larger group and they want to split out on their own? Would you recommend partnering with other people, or just kind of similar advice to what you just gave for the new grad?
Okay, I love this question. Yes. So the answer is yes. Which is to say, it depends. This is something that I tell my residents all the time is, almost any question you ask me, the answer is going to be, it depends. And it's going to be followed by this lengthy explanation. But okay, so let's take the person who's been in practice for say 3 or 4 years. And I think the first question that I would want people to ask themselves is, are you running to something or are you running from something? And that's a really important question to ask. So if someone's thinking about striking out on their own, my next question is why? Is it because you're just disillusioned with the group that you're working with? Is it because you've got a toxic work environment? Is it because there's no upward potential for growth? Is it, because you just want to be closer to family? Is it a salary thing? Those are all things that are good reasons to not be satisfied with your current position, but maybe not good enough reasons to leave your current position. And so I would want you to consider whether or not it's a better idea to modify your current position. Maybe it's something that you need to ask for a salary raise, or you want to ask for an opportunity to buy into some of the ancillary income streams, or maybe it's a matter of changing your work hours or changing your schedule around. Maybe it's something like that. Now, if you do want to strike out on your own, then I think you need to consider what specialty you're in and how much work it's going to be and how much financial headache it's going to be to create your own practice. So for example, if you're doing GI, like I said, it's A, very, very expensive, and B, we get called in for emergencies all the time. So if you're out there and you're on your own, oh my goodness, I mean, you're going to be on call every single day, and you're going to be seeing patients in the hospital. You're going to be seeing patients in your clinic doing procedures, and you got to run a small business. I mean, that is a tremendous amount of work. So I think the answer is that it's not going to be the same for everybody. So if you're, a pediatrician and you want to go and hang up a shingle, hire a nurse and a front desk person and just kind of get to work, you can probably do that inside of a couple of months. So I guess that's the first thing is, are you running from something or to something? The second is, can you modify what your current situation is to look more like what you want? And then the third thing is you really need to sit down and consider the cost of what the move is in terms of your time, in terms of your schedule, and in terms of your money.
That's great. I want to unpack some of the things you said there. I think running towards versus away is a point that should be repeated over and over again. I know I see that a lot with some of my clients who are just like, I just want to do something else, and it's like, well, what? And they're like, well, I don't know. I would do anything but medicine. I'm like, well, that's not really a good answer either. I know I experienced that myself in my own burnout issues, where every week I was going to be something. I was going to do aesthetics, and then I was going to do chart review, and then and then until I buckled down and figure out what exactly I wanted in life, I wasn't able to figure out a plan to get there. And I'm still practicing right now, and I'm happy practicing emergency medicine and doing all my other things. So running towards versus away is like something that should be harped on again and again and again. The other thing I wanted to say, as far as to your second point, is that, I mean, I think that's something to consider. Well, your second point versus your third point, I don't remember. To consider what the financial ramifications of what they're doing is to, I think sometimes private practice and owning your own business is, glamorized to some degree. Like, I'm going to have my own business and I'm going to make $4 million a year and make my own schedule. And that's not really necessarily the truth. Like you said, with the call schedule, which is why I brought up the issue of partners. So what do you think about partnering with others to start a practice?
Yeah, well, so here's my advice for folks on partnering with folks. You need to think of it the same way as you would think of a marriage, because functionally a partnership is essentially a marriage relationship. It's a working marriage covenant, essentially. So you're going to be working with these folks for more hours in a day than you are with people in your family in most cases, right? Especially if you're in some of the really intense fields like, say, cards and GI, or like OBGYN or something where you're just called in all the time, right? So you need to like the people that you're working with. I think that's really key. The second thing is you need to partner with people that can fill in the gaps for you. So you need to know what your strengths and your weaknesses are, and pick and work with people that are going to complement those areas. So if you're someone who's really not savvy about business, you may benefit from working with someone who's really got a strong business mindset. Maybe you're really great with administration, but they're really great with, say, finance. And so kind of marrying up those strengths is really important. But I think you need to go into that decision very slowly. Okay. Just like, I know with when you're dating for marriage, for example, very few people get married after having gone on 3 dates, right? It's like, hey, we enjoy the same movies. We love hanging out together. Shall we get married? How about next month? Is that good for you? Right. That never happens. So if you're going to be going into partnership with somebody, I think you need to approach it the same way. It needs to be someone with whom you've developed significant trust, And that's usually going to be based on a long time of working relationship. And I really think that is something that you ought to just really spend a long time. I mean, I heard once somebody said the only kind of ship that won't sail is a partnership, and it's true that it's true that most small businesses fail within the first 5 years. Something like 99% fail within 10 years, and I think it's something like 80% at 5. So I think you need to go slow and make sure that it's someone that you're going to be comfortable in an essentially a marriage type relationship. Are you going to be comfortable working that closely with them for, perhaps upwards of 30 years?
Yeah, I love it. That's great advice. Well, Brent, I want to talk a little bit more about what you're doing. So I know you just recently launched a podcast. I'm a little behind. I got to catch all the episodes, but you want to talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah. So the podcast was born out of the blog, which has just been going in the last year here. But the idea is to give people resources, connections, and knowledge to help them manage their businesses more successfully and master their personal finances. So I'm trying to do a little bit of both. We've had some really amazing guests on there. We've had some great folks talking about personal finance, like we had Physician on Fire, Passive Income MD. But I'm trying actually something a little bit different that I think is a little bit newer in the realm of physician podcasting, at least as I've seen it, is trying to get people outside of medicine that can really teach us more about those kinds of things. So, for example, I had on the chief of teaching and facilitation at StoryBrand, which is one of the top marketing firms in the country, and just an awesome company to work with. And they've written great books. They got great podcasts, but that's completely a non-medical thing, right? So I think that there's a lot that we can learn about how to do business from outside the medical industry. And so I think incorporating some of those things are going to be really good. And it's really been great because it's given me some opportunities to kind of branch out. We've had some folks talking about things like leadership, and I've got some stuff coming up on entrepreneurship and innovation and things. And so it's really opened up some cool doors.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've had a multidisciplinary approach to my show in the past too, and some of the best episodes come from people that either are not physicians or are related to medicine but are not clinical, and really have some great lessons to be learned there. So yeah, keep that up. I got a bunch of your shows in the docket. Scope of practice, that's your business. So what do you do with that? You got the blog, the podcast, what else?
So those are the big two, is the blog and the podcast. I'm putting out episodes every week, and we got lots of great articles on the site. So I'm getting ready to launch a coaching platform for financial coaching and business coaching. And who knows after that? I mean, the sky's the limit. There's a lot of need out there. So I've been kicking around the idea of some online courses after talking to some folks and a few other things. So I think there's going to be a lot of cool stuff coming down the pike.
Absolutely. Yep. Everywhere I go, I see Brent Lacey. So keep doing what you're doing. I think you're offering a great service to our community. So thank you. That's incredible. I ask all the guests. So do you have a book recommendation for the listeners?
Yeah. So I'm going to offer two, if it's okay. So my favorite fiction book of all time is Ender's Game. And they came out with a movie about, I don't know, 3 or 4 years ago or something like that. But the book is phenomenal. It's a science fiction book, but it's really more about leadership and tactics and strategy, and it's absolutely a phenomenal read. And so that's my favorite book of all time. And then my favorite business growth book for folks that I would want to give is called Good to Great by Jim Collins. And he took anything Jim Collins has written is outstanding, but Good to Great is definitely my favorite. Basically, he took a series of companies, so 11 companies that have shown themselves to be great companies in terms of how much they're able to produce and how profitable they're able to be, and comparing those to companies that are just average and trying to extrapolate what are the differences that make a good company into a great company, and then trying to distill that into some actionable nuggets that we can actually use to create greatness in our own businesses. It's a phenomenal read and definitely needs to be on the list for everybody who's thinking about any kind of leadership or entrepreneurship or small business ownership.
That good to great has not been mentioned yet, and I think I read that about a year ago. That is excellent. I'm a fellow Ender's Game nerd myself, although a lot of the sequels got a little strange. But
yeah, the Shadow series was good, but some of the Speaker for the Dead series, I wasn't.
Yeah, I
super
agree.
fan of.
I agree, but no, Ender's Game, the original, will really should appeal to non-science fiction readers as well, because a lot of great lessons in that book. So, Brent, if you could give just a single piece of advice to early career docs, now that includes residents and people up to about 7 years out of training, what would that single piece of advice be?
My single piece of advice would be that you need to go for opportunities where you can find them. So nobody's going to just throw you stuff on a silver platter, but the information is out there. If you want to start a practice, or if you want to join a practice, or if you want to know what it looks like to be a leader of a hospital, or if you want to think about medical device innovation, I mean, there's opportunities, there's things out there, and there's people that want to help. But no one's just going to give it to you. So don't be afraid to go for it, and just read as much as you can, learn as much as you can, listen to podcasts like Andrew's, listen to TED Talks, listen to speakers, go to conferences, meet people, but the thing that you got to recognize, I think, and I think this is true of pretty much any industry, whenever you see someone who is just wildly successful at something that you want to do, just remember, when what you may be seeing is them taking off, what you didn't see is however many years it took for them to build the runway that was required for them to be able to take off. So I think it was Warren Buffett that said, he worked 35 years at being an overnight success. And and sometimes it just takes a long time to get there. But man, the information's out there. Folks like Andrew will help you. Folks like me will all help you. But just keep learning, never stop, and then just go for it and get what you want, and just never stop learning.
Yeah, I mean that is such a great point. I say it again and again that the MD or DO degree is the most marketable degree that there is. There are so many things that you could do with it and leverage it to do. And when I talk to residents about contracts and such, you will never get what you don't ask for, and that has been a problem for many years with doctors and healthcare professionals in general. So if you want something, the worst thing people can say is no. So, Brent, I really enjoyed this talk with you. Where can people find you if they want to pick your brain or just get to know you a little better?
Yeah, the best place is going to be the website. It's all the stuff's on there. That's thescopeofpractice.com. So thescopeofpractice.com. And there's links at the top to the podcast and the blog articles that are searchable. And, if you want some one-on-one help with your finances or your business, then, I'm certainly happy to help. And for your readers, if they're interested, on the front page of the website, I've got a free PDF download that people can just take just for showing up and just to say thank you for checking me out. It's called the 10-day simple clinic makeover. It's just a little 10-day challenge that you can do to try to boost the efficiency and the safety and the customer service aspect of your business. And I've seen some people make just some amazing strides just from doing something real simple like that. So just check it out at thescopeofpractice.com.
Yeah, I advise everyone to go grab that. Not a lot of time you get free value like that. So go grab that if that fits you, please do. So Brent, it's been fun. I've enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for giving so much value to our listenership here, and I wish you the best of luck. And I'm going to continue to enjoy seeing your face pop up everywhere I go.
Thanks a lot. I appreciate it, Andrew. Thanks for having me on today.
All right, take care. Well, I really enjoyed that chat with Dr. Brent Lacey. He really knows his stuff when it comes to starting and managing practices. Some salient points are that Dr. Lacey feels that the COVID crisis will re-engage people's interest in private practice. He briefly discusses direct primary care as an exciting model and what it is. Brent warns new grads to consider startup costs for procedural specialties and to consider joining a group and learning the business of medicine for a time. Dr. Lacey states to always consider running towards versus away from something, and this is a statement that I feel very strongly about myself. Brent cautions about partnerships and states they are basically a marriage, so to be very careful. That's all we have for today, guys. Thank you again for listening. Please check out my website at andrewtisserdo.com for more information on what's going on. Additionally, if you could please leave me an honest rating and review on Apple Podcasts, that would be huge. All right, guys, until next time, keep talking. All opinions expressed by the guest in this episode are solely the guest's opinions and do not reflect the opinions of Andrew Tisser DO, Talk to Me Doc LLC, or any affiliates thereof. The guest's opinions are based upon information he or she considers reliable, but Andrew Tisser DO, Talk to Me Doc LLC, nor any affiliates thereof warrant its completeness or accuracy. The guest, Andrew Tisser DO, Talk to Me Doc LLC, or any affiliates thereof are not under any obligation to update or correct any information provided in this episode. The guest statements and opinions are subject to change without notice.